Hey everyone, good evening. I am so glad to be here with you. As I was looking in the chat and you all were introducing yourselves, I saw someone say, I'm a little tired tonight, but I made it, and I feel you on that. We made it. You showed up because you are looking to either practice or maybe jumping into web development for the first time. And I am so honored that you're allowing me the opportunity to invite you into what that could look like. So, yes, today is session 1 of Unlocking the Mysteries of Web Dev Basics for Aspiring Developers. And I will tell you that after this workshop, you can drop the aspiring part, because I believe that when you develop, when you code, you're a developer. Okay, so promise me, let me know in the chat if you're going to promise me that you will never use the word aspiring after you finish this workshop. Let me know if you can commit to doing that in the chat. I feel like this is so important. You have to be confident about who you are and how you show up. So let me see it. All right. Yes, Dominic. Yes, yes. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and jump in as others are saying, yes, I'm committed. I'm a developer now. I love the confidence. You know, your confidence can take you so much further than you realize. And so tonight we're going to bump up that confidence just a little bit. Okay. But before we do, we're going to go ahead and jump into our presentation. So, hi, I'm Candice. I am a former math teacher. I'm a military spouse, a mom of 2 boys. So that alone can tell you how crazy my life is. But now I am a front-end developer who loves to create content specifically on LinkedIn. So please make sure you follow me on LinkedIn if you want to get some content about web development, freelancing, marketing, all the things. I'll talk about it there. And I am a founder of a company called Anchor Web Studio. It is my web development and now marketing agency. And I am the creator of the 14-day LinkedIn Writing Challenge, where I invite people just like you to join me in creating a personal brand online by creating content. All right. So that's just a little bit about me, but you're not here to learn about me. You're here to learn about web development fundamentals and basics. So what are we going to talk about and what are we going to do? So before we actually jump into the coding, because I know you're excited, you're like, Candice, I came here to code. I am tired of hearing you talk. Okay, I get it. But before we jump in, I think it's very important, especially if this is your first time, maybe jumping onto a workshop or learning how to code. We're going to talk a little bit about web development, what a role for a web developer could look like, some of the tools, some basic terms. Then we're going to get down to the nitty gritty with HTML, CSS, and talk about JavaScript as well. But today we're going to jump into a project. So by the end of this session, you will have something that you can say, I coded, and I can put it in my portfolio. So this might be your first or your next project. And then we're going to continue and build on that project in session 2, where we're going to focus just on JavaScript. Okay, so today is HTML, CSS, and then we're going to add on the JavaScript when we complete our project. Okay, so I hope you will join me for both sessions. And then at the end, we will have some time for Q&A. I will let you know, because I'm a former educator, I'm used to having the questions during the workshop. So if you have a question or you want to give me some feedback, please do. In fact, if you want to unmute and talk to me, that's even better. Okay. So yeah, we're about to get started. I hope you're excited. I'm excited. Let's go. So if you are, you know, just hanging around other developers, or maybe you're on LinkedIn or other social media with other developers, you know that the tech industry looks a lot different than maybe it did a couple years ago. People that have been programming as developers, application developers, web developers, software developers, anything that has to do with code, you're probably wondering, has it changed so much that it's too late for me? And I want you to know that it's not. There is plenty of room for you, even if you're getting started today, because guess what? I just got into this thing a little over a year and a half ago. Okay. So, and opportunities are still coming my way. But before we can even start talking about the career aspect of it, we need to know that there is plenty of room for you. Okay. It is not too late. It will never be too late. With all the talk about AI and all the things that are always coming out, there is still room for you, because guess what? The AI still needs someone to program it or to prompt it. You need a person to do that work. And so it just means that you might have to tailor your skills a little bit, or you might have to get a little bit creative or stack on another skill, which is why I do digital marketing as well. But there is more than enough room for you. Also, as I mentioned, there's AI engineers, there's data science, there's freelancing and business, which is what I love, but there is room for you, okay? So I want you to know that you can do this and you have a place because you have something you need to bring to the table. All right, so if you're wondering, okay, what is a developer, specifically? And I've heard about the different types of roles. We'll talk about it really quickly. So development is very multifaceted, just like people, all right? So when you think about web development, you can think about the creation of software, you can think about the design and how you solve problems with tech. So there are front-end developers, there are back-end developers, and then there are those who we call full stack developers, where they do both and, okay? So I want to know from you, as I'm describing front end and back end, which one are you, I guess, more interested in? I'm a front end developer. I have no interest in back end. I'll just be 100% with you. I've done it. I can do it, but I don't have an interest in it. But you might be a little different. So listen to the different types, and you might even say, I want to do it all. So you're a full stack. Okay. So a front-end developer is the person that likes to create what we call the client side, the front-facing part of the website. So you might be very interested in user experience, design, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript are just kind of your thing, and you want to stay there. And it can be more satisfying for you if you are a visual person like me and you want to see your work happen almost immediately. I need that dopamine hit like that. When I complete something, I want to see it. If I don't see it, I'm not satisfied. I will quit. Okay, I'm just being 100% with you. So I like the front end because I can see what I'm doing almost immediately. Okay, then you have back-end developers who like to work on the server side. So remember, front end is client side, back end is server side, and it's like the engine that runs the website or the application, okay? So you might be drawn to this if you're more of like a logical person who likes working with databases and logic, operations, those types of things. Like you want to get under the hood. You know what I'm saying? You want to get under the hood of everything. You don't care about how pretty it is. You don't care how the user can get through all the things. You just want to make it work and it be functional and just do all the things that it needs to do. So let me hear from you. What are you excited about? Are you more excited about front end? Are you more excited about the back end? Or are you more excited about the full stack? Okay, so I see some people saying all of it. Okay, so we got some front end, full stack, back end. Okay, love it, love it. So as you can see, there are options there. There are options, okay? Lawrence, I love it. You said whatever pays the bills, because guess what? Skills pay the bills. So if you can get all the skills, and then that means that there are wide open opportunities everywhere for you. I love it. Thank you for sharing. All right, so let's keep going. So some of the tools that you will find yourself using as a web developer, no matter, you are in front end, back end, full stack. And I say web developer because I consider myself a web developer, but really we're going to talk about this in a little bit. The more overarching is software development. So software developers use coding editors. Okay, we're going to look at what that is in just a moment. you will use GitHub and you will use Slack, okay? So just know that those three are more than likely the tools that you're going to use when you work with teams. Okay, so for example, code editors are the software that allows you to actually write the code, to edit the code, and to manage it. Then you have GitHub, where it's a web-based platform that allows you to collaborate with other developers as you're working on projects and you need to manage your code repositories. Okay. And then Slack is more so for communication, for teams. And it's a centralized space where you can share files and communicate through text, even video. And so you might have heard about these or maybe used these already. But just in case you haven't had the opportunity yet, this is VS Code. This is a very popular code editor. And it allows you to do a lot of different things, okay? We're not going to get into the nitty gritty of that because we're not going to use this specifically today to write our code, but as you go further into your journey, you will be using a code editor and it will look very similar to this, whether you're using VS Code or something else like Atom is another popular one. But I do encourage you to look into code editors and maybe start using them as you learn more about development today and as we move into some coding. All right, and then GitHub. I'm sure you've heard about GitHub if you've been around for any amount of time, but this is where you will store remotely your version control. And when you think about version control, you can kind of think about it as different iterations. So let's say if you've used Google Docs before, you have written on a document and maybe you edit something the next day, you can actually go back and look at your previous versions of the document. And if you want to roll back to it, you're like, you know what, the edits I made today, I don't like it. I want to go back to what I finished yesterday. You can roll back to a different version. And you can do that with your code with GitHub. You can also store your code here. You can share files here. And you can do so publicly or privately. But GitHub is something that you will use as a developer. Okay. And then Slack, which is so cool because I mean, Women Who Code uses Slack. So if you're not familiar with Slack, make sure that you get in there, you get familiar with it, because these days Slack is one of those applications that is used for teams. Another one that people use is like Microsoft Teams. And so if you've used any of these types of tools, I would love to hear from you. Which ones have you used before, and maybe in what type of situation? Maybe it was a boot camp, maybe it was working on a project with a couple of people, maybe it was as you just got in there yourself, maybe you're self-taught and you decided, I'm going to try some of this stuff out. Let me know in the chat, have you used any of these and how? So would love to hear about that. Because as I said, as you get more and more into development, you will have an opportunity to probably use all of these. So yes, Leslie, thank you so much for sharing. You already use Slack. Awesome, awesome. And yes, GitHub is something that you'll get into more for sure. All right, VS Code, yes, yes. All right, some people have used all of them. That's awesome. Slack, GitHub, awesome. So as you can see, it is important to be familiar with these because some people are using them already, maybe in their self-learning or with a team already. Okay, now we're almost to the coding part. We're almost there, but before we do, we have to make sure we're speaking the same language or using the similar terms. So for example, earlier I mentioned the term software development and also web development. And so let's kind of talk about the differences. Software development is more of a broader term. It's an overarching umbrella for the process of designing, coding, testing, debugging, maintaining software, okay? So software can include desktop applications, mobile apps, embedded systems, and more, okay? Now, when you're on the web, it is also software development, okay? But software development is one of those very specific development spaces that you might find yourself in, okay? So As you see here, web development can be focused solely on creating websites and web applications. So anything that shows up on the web, okay? But you can do software development where maybe it's a desktop application, and that is different. There's also mobile application development, okay? So as you can see, there's many different ways that you can develop as a developer, software developer. But no matter which way you go, there are some things that are going to be overarching and important for us to define. So just a few more words here. We have syntax. And so syntax is going to be the set of rules and the grammar that defines the structure and the format of a program language. So if you have used JavaScript before, and maybe you have coded with Python, you will notice that the syntax is different, okay? So sometimes you will see semicolons more in JavaScript, and you will see colons more in Python, okay? So it's just a set of rules that kind of set the structure for how that particular language or grammar is defined, okay? And you need to make sure that your syntax is done correctly for your programming language, because if not, you're going to have what's called bugs, okay? Not the type of bugs that we say, ooh, I don't like that, but you might cringe a little bit when you see those bugs in your coding editor, because it's a flaw, it's an error that you have to fix, because if you don't, it won't produce the results that you expect. Because when you're talking to a computer, you have to be very specific. Oh my goodness, like you can't make any errors or it is not picking up what you're laying down. Do you feel me? So like you have to get that syntax on point, and you have to make sure that those flaws are corrected, or the computer will not pick up the language that you're speaking, and then it will not output what you're trying to do, okay? And then here we have debugging. That's the process of correcting, or first identifying and then correcting those errors so that you can see the results that you want, either on the front end or the back end. And as a newbie, and even as an intermediate, I would consider myself as an intermediate developer, you're gonna find bugs. There's gonna be errors. Even for senior developers, there's going to be errors. So don't think, oh my goodness, my code is not executing, I'm not programming right, there's this red squiggly line, what does that mean? Like, it's normal. But the good thing is that as a developer, you are also a problem solver. So that's a part of the process, and that is part of your job, okay? So don't let it discourage you. It is a normal part of the process. But of course, as you do more and more coding and programming, you won't see as many bugs, okay? All right, and then we have algorithms, which is like a step-by-step procedure or a set of rules that help you to solve problems as you are developing projects and programs, okay? So this requires you to understand the problem that you're solving almost to like the bare minimum, as if you're talking to something, which you are, you're talking to a computer, but you're talking in such a way where you're giving it very specific instructions, which allows you to code very specifically, and then it cuts down on the amount of bugs and errors that you have, okay? So for example, if I asked you, what is the algorithm for creating a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? You talking to me about it, you might break that down to me in a way where you're not being very specific. But if you were talking to a computer and writing a coding or programming something that is having the computer to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, you have to be very specific. I mean, very specific, to the point where you are like, does it have to be this specific? It does. And so when you are programming, oftentimes when you are trying to figure out how to do that, you got to first think about the step-by-step procedures, because I am a very visual person. I like to draw my my algorithm, or the process that I want my program to actually run before I actually code it, okay? And so we'll talk about that more so in our second session when we get into JavaScript. But lastly, the programming language. It is a language with a set of rules and syntax, and it is what allows you to communicate to the computer so it can execute exactly what you want. Okay, so oftentimes, especially in the beginning, you will learn basic programming such as JavaScript or Python. And usually, not all the times, it's after you learn markup languages. Okay, so markup languages, that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about HTML, which is hypertext markup language. And then we're also going to talk about CSS, which is a little bit different. And then we're going to talk about JavaScript on session 2. So let's go ahead and get into why y'all came here. We're going to start with HTML, CSS, and talk about JavaScript. So we'll be ready for it in session 2. But as I mentioned, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it is the structure for a web page. You can think of it like the bones or the skeleton of what you are developing, okay? CSS is the skin or the clothes that you put on the skeleton, which gives it a little personality. And as you can tell, I get into this because I love the front end. The CSS is what allows you to style the HTML, the structure of the web page or the application or whatever, okay? So it's the visual appearance and presentation that allows you to bring a little bit different style to your HTML. So even today, as we work on this project, your CSS, you might want to modify it a little bit so that it brings a little bit of your personality into it. And that's the beauty of CSS, okay? And then we have JavaScript, which is a scripting programming language, and that's what gives it movement, okay? So we talked about the skeleton, which is the HTML. We talked about the skin and the clothes, which is the CSS, and then the JavaScript is the movement, all right? It brings everything to life as such as animations, anything that's interactive, even calculations and manipulating data, okay? So we are going to jump right into coding today. So before we do, I want to give y'all just a moment to get on to CodePen. The link is here on your screen, but it's also in the chat, in the comments there for you to just click on. And what you will do is actually create your account if you don't have one already. If you do, then you should just be able to log in. And then once you do, let me know in the chat that you have logged in, okay? And I would say right now is a good time if you need to get a sip of water or, if you want to stretch real quick. We'll just have a couple of minutes, let's say 5 minutes to get on. And while you do, I will switch my screen. Before I switch my screen, I didn't tell y'all what we were doing. So we're going to code this this recipe card right here that you see. This is for session 1, but for session 2, we're going to make it interactive, okay? So for today, you're going to walk away with a recipe card that you have coded and you can modify. If you don't like peaches and cream oatmeal, you can choose something else, brownies or spaghetti, whatever you want. But this is what we're going to do together, and then you can modify it as throughout the week until we meet next week, and then we'll add on the JavaScript. And I don't want to tell you exactly what we'll do yet next week, but it's going to be fun. So awesome. There are some people that have gotten logged in, and so let me switch my screen to make sure I'm with you. If you have any problems logging in, let us know. But you can use GitHub. If you have GitHub to log in, you can use Gmail, or you can just set it up like a standard email and password. But for sure, let us know if there's any issues there. Let's see. And I'm going to share my screen real quick. And Linda, is everything good? Is my sound okay? I didn't ask that in the beginning, but is everything good on your end?
Everything's perfect. Love
Awesome.
it.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, let me make sure. And one thing I did not mention is when you're a developer, oftentimes you're going to work with multiple screens. So there's going to be times I may not look straight ahead because I'm looking at another screen, but just know that I'm with you 100%. Okay, so um, let me just check the chat, make sure everybody is good. Okay. And I understand if maybe you're not able to code right this moment. Like there's sometimes, maybe you're just listening in because you're at work or with your kiddos, or maybe you're driving. I don't know, but if you are able to log in, we would love for you to join us as we code. And if you're not able to, there will be a recording and you can always jump in later. Okay, so no worries with that. All right. I'm going to assume that we're good with everyone logging in. If you need any help, please let us know. All right. So once you are on CodePen, you will be able to start a pen. Okay. So I actually have my screen blown up a little bit. So we're going to start a new pen. And so you should see it on your left-hand side here. And then where it says create, you'll click on the pen and then just click on pen again. We're just doing a simple project today. So once you get there, you'll see 3 columns, okay? So remember, we're only working with HTML and CSS today. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna bump JavaScript out of the way. And you can do that by just taking the panels and widening them out. That was hard to say. So you can close it, or, just make sure you have a split screen there where you're not worried about JavaScript, okay? So I want to remind you of what we are building here. So let me pull this up. We are doing a recipe card, but before we do, I want to show you, are you able to see this, I guess like this diagram, this design? Okay.
Yes,
Yes.
it looks
Perfect.
great.
Perfect. Okay, so if you are a web designer or a UX or UI designer, you're probably not going to use Canva, but we're using Canva today, just because I need to show you how this is organized before we actually get into it. So remember, we're doing a recipe card, and this recipe card is going to be on a web screen. Okay, so this is going to be the background of our recipe card, but our actual card is going to be a div or a section. I like to call it like a container. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create a container called a div in our HTML. We're starting with our HTML only, so you can actually move this CSS over. Usually when you are coding, you have to kind of set it up and do all these technical things before you can code. And because this is a very beginner-friendly coding environment, we're going to just jump straight into coding, and that's why we're using CodePen, okay? But we're going to start right with the HTML, and as we do so, we're going to create what we call an element of a div, okay? And when you create an element, you usually have an opening tag and a closing tag, okay? And so you can just follow along with me. So this container is actually going to contain what is called a recipe card, all right? So if we go back to our design, this div is actually this purple box, our first container of our recipe card. And when we start coding, we need to let our code be defined by not only elements, which we'll talk about a little bit more, but we're going to use what's called a class to define what this div really is, okay? And when you do that, you need to go into your opening tag here, and you're simply going to write the word class equals, we're going to put some quotations, and we want to define this div as the class recipe card, okay? So that we know what it is, and also so the computer will know what it is. All right. So every now and then I'm going to just paste the code in the chat. So if for some reason, you miss something or you're not sure, you can just copy and paste into your coding editor. So you'll see there in the chat that I have what's on my screen in the chat. Okay. So that is one div, one container that we have. And we're just going to section this out a little bit or put some space here because we got some stuff that's got to go inside of it, right? So if we go back to our design, we actually have two more divs or two more containers. So we have this container at the top. This is a div. And then we have another one. It's bordered with red, okay? So we have two other divs inside of a div. Okay, are you confused yet? Because it can be if this is your first time. But what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that we're indenting so that we can see where we're at, what we're working with, okay? So inside of this space, we're actually going to create another div. Remember, there's two divs. And we need to make sure we have an opening and closing tag. This is our opening tag. This is our closing tag. What are you noticing about the closing tag? What's the difference between the opening and closing tag? Let me know in the comments as I create our two divs. You can indent with the tab button. So it is usually on the left side of your keyboard there's like an escape and then like a tilde, I think that's what it's called, and then your tab button. All right. So what is the difference between your opening and closing tag? Yep, exactly, Leslie. So the closing tag will have this slash right in front of it. That's how we know that we're closing that element. And in this case, it's a div, okay? So I want to make sure that you all can see what we're working with. Okay, so we have our big div. It's the outline of our recipe card. And then we have a div at the top, and then we have a div at the bottom. When we go back to our design, we see that the top one has something inside, okay? And the bottom one has a lot of somethings inside, but we're gonna start with the top one. And we're not gonna name it anything right now. I don't think that that's very important right now. But inside of our div, we saw an image, okay? So what we're gonna do is we're going to create an image tag. And what's different about this tag than the div element with its opening and closing tags, the image does not have a closing tag, it's self-closing, okay? So inside of that top section or container, we have an image. So as you can see inside, we have placed an image, okay? But we need to let the computer know, where is this image coming from? So the way that we do that is by letting it know where to source the image, okay? So inside of your image tag, you're going to write src and equals, and I actually will post this in the chat. You're going to source this image from this URL here, okay? So you can copy and paste that. I have that just for you. So you have your image tag, your source equals quotations, and this is where you're going to paste that URL, okay? You're letting it know that the image is coming from this URL, okay? We won't get into the specifics of how do you upload your image and all that. It really depends on you know, what you're working with. If you're working in a code editor, you would upload it there, but we're not working with a typical code editor like VS Code. So I created something, I'm hosting it on my website, and then we are getting the URL from there. But you could get that URL from anywhere, okay? And maybe you can play around with that later. All right, so I am going to cut and paste this and put it into the chat just in case someone is just joining us, or maybe they're finding some bugs, but that's what we have so far. And at the bottom of your page, you'll see something. You actually have something going on here, okay? Remember, the front end, you can see almost immediately what you're working with, okay? All right, so let's go back to our design. Inside our first div, we have an image, okay? And we are going to actually write some alt text, okay? Alt text is what we use when we want to make sure that it is accessible even for those that might be visually impaired, okay? So what we will do is describe what is the picture about, okay? Instead of me writing the alt text, can someone just in the chat give us a quick description of what this image is? And once you do, we will paste it in the alt text here, okay? So as someone is doing that, we're going to move on until we get a description. We'll paste it there. So someone, I would love for someone to just give us a quick description. It doesn't even have to be a complete sentence. What is this a picture of? And then we will paste it there, okay? As we're waiting on that, we're going to look at this second div here, okay? Let's go back to our image. Our top div is an image. This bottom div has a lot of different stuff in here, okay? So we have a recipe title. Our recipe title is going to be something that is going to demonstrate hierarchy. It is probably the most important thing on our page here. And so we want to make sure that it is, you know, bigger than all the rest of the text. And we don't have to worry about that if we code it correctly. And so we're going to code it in just a moment. We have some alt text here. We're going to put into our quotes there. All right. Thank you so much, Vishwa. Thank you so much. I apologize if I said your name incorrectly, but I really appreciate you volunteering to do that. Okay. So in order to get that title, okay, which will tell us what this whole thing that we're building is about, we're going to create what is called a H1. I don't know what, okay, I lost my place. We're going to create a H1, which is a heading, okay? I feel like something just happened. Give me 1 second. There we go. Okay, H1, opening and closing. And it's a 1 because it's the most important heading on the page. Can someone tell me, what did I do wrong here? Did I do something wrong here? What did I do wrong? I have a heading.
Backslash is missing.
That's right. And guess what? That will happen a lot. And you'll be like, why isn't my stuff working? It's because of that little slash. So we got our H1, and we're going to put peaches and cream. All right. Oatmeal, because that's the name of our project. Okay. And I would encourage you right now to save your project so you can make sure that everything that you've done so far saves and you don't lose it. And then also it will populate down here, hopefully. All right. We're going to keep working. All right. So we have our first div, and it is peaches and cream oatmeal. And then right under that, I'm going to show you what this looks like. Give me 1 second. I'm going to show y'all this again. the original project. So remember, we have peaches and cream oatmeal, and then we have another heading, but this heading is a little bit smaller than the first. So instead of doing H1, again, we're going to do H2, okay? So right under that, inside of this div, we're going to do H2, open and closing. Don't forget your slash. And then we're going to put breakfast recipe. This is a subheading, so it's going to be a little bit smaller. Breakfast recipe. Okay. All right, let's see what's happening down here. I got a lot of stuff on my screen. Give me 1 second. All right. Yay. Look, y'all. So we got some stuff going on your screen. You're coding. Okay. You're doing it. All right. So let's move this back down so we can keep coding. And so we have our H1, we have our H2, and then we have what's more of like a paragraph description, okay? So instead of you typing all that out, I'm gonna put this in the chat, but before you put it on your code editor here, we have to describe what the element will be, okay? So it's a paragraph. So what do you think that your tags will be here? Paragraph. Usually in coding, it is pretty simple to figure out. Yep, so it's going to be a P, opening and closing P, and then just copy and paste what I put in the chat there. And then you'll have your paragraph, okay? Save it. Let's see what we got there. Let's see. Uh-oh, y'all, we got something. It's happening. You're coding. All right. So let me just take everything here just in case something's not right. You're not sure what's going on. Here is our code, okay, so far. If for some reason something's not working, just copy that, put it in, and you can catch up with this. All right. So remember, this is the structure. We're only doing the structure. So as far as like anything else, it's not there yet, but it's almost there. In fact, we're almost done, okay? So let's look at the next part. So we have our H1, our H2, we have paragraph description, and then we have another heading, but this heading is not as big and it's not as important. So anyone want to guess? How are we going to code that? Yep, exactly. Thank you, Leslie and Dominique. So we're going to go ahead and put H3, because this is the third heading, opening and closing tag. And it is going to say ingredients, okay? Ingredients. Like, how do you spell ingredients? Okay, I think that's right. All right. So we have ingredients, and then this time we don't have a paragraph. We have what most people would say bullet points, but really what it is, it's an unordered list. It's a list of items that it doesn't matter what order they're in, okay? That's why it's not numbered. So in order to code an unordered list, we're going to use, let's see if anybody can figure it out. Unordered list. We're going to do, ooh, good guess. We are going to use, I think that says LI. We are going to use that in just a moment. Okay, yes. So yes, we're going to use UL, okay? Unordered list, okay? The unordered and then the list, UL, all right? Now, we can't just stop there. We actually have to do the list items like Dominique said. So we are going to put some space between our two tags, our opening and closing tag for unordered list, and then we're going to do each item. So we're going to have list item, which is LI. And then we're going to do the closing tag. And inside of the closing tag is where you're going to put the content. So this is something that I like to do when I know I'm going to do the same code over and over. I will copy, and I'm going to go ahead and paste it a couple times so I don't have to, you know, type it every single time. And then I am going to put in the chat. Actually, I'm just going to go ahead and give you the full thing. Okay. All the list items. All right, so you're going to have list items for each one of these ingredients, and just copy and paste this. It will just save us a little bit of time. All right. Oh, I didn't give it all to you. Sorry. Don't paste that. Don't paste that. 1 second. I'm trying to get it all, y'all. All right. Here we go. That's all of it. The second one, take the second one. You can just copy and paste all of that inside, or nested. That's what we say, nested within the UL, okay? So you'll see that we have unordered list, and then we have our list items for each ingredient. Boom, 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 boom. And then we have to make sure that we have a closing tag for the unordered list, okay? And after that, let's put a little space, because look, we're not quite finished. We're not quite finished. So we have our ingredients, we have our unordered list, and then we have instructions. So the ingredients and the instructions are on the same level as far as importance. So we're going to use the H3 again, okay? We're going to use the H3 again. So put a little space, H3. And here we're going to do the, what is it called? Instructions. Okay. So what is the difference between this top list and this bottom list? What is the difference? They're both lists. What's the difference? And can anyone tell me how we might code that? Give us your best guess. Okay, so Dominique says, yes, it's an ordered list this time. It's not unordered. It is very important. When you do a recipe, you got to do it in order, right? You have to do it in the right order. So what will be the way that we code that? If you already know, you can get started. But I'm going to make sure that yes, good job, Leslie. So we're going to do ordered list. Okay, give you a little space in between. And just like we did for the unordered list, we're going to do the same for ordered list. So we got to put each list item. Okay, so I actually did not list out each item like I should have. And so that will be something that you will go back and do on your own. But I'm going to give you all the instructions in the chat. And then you can list it out. That'll kind of just be a little project for you, okay? So there's all the stuff. All right, so we're going to do list item. I'll just give you a moment to do that. And remember, I like to just do all that. And then take each step out of the chat, and then you can copy paste. And if you don't have time to do all of it separate, you can wait to the end where I give you all the code, or you can just clump it all together in the first list item and then separate it out later. So it's whatever works for you, okay? And we're gonna style this. Oh my goodness, we're doing good time. We're doing good time. We're almost done. Okay. So I'm going to save it. I want to scroll up and see what is it looking like. So we got peaches and cream oatmeal, breakfast recipe. Okay, awesome. Okay. Uh-oh, something's wrong. What's wrong? Why is it bold? Does anybody know? Can someone find the error? Why does it all look like a heading? It's not supposed to be like that. What's wrong? Yes, Leslie, you have great eyes. So it's all still under the H3 because I never closed the tag. So we need to close it. And then look what happens immediately. Boom. There you go. All right. There we go. Okay. So we have finished with the HTML, and now all we need to do is style it. We need to make sure that it is not taking up the entire width of the web page. We need to make sure that we have a beautiful peachy background, and then basically we're done. Okay, so we're going to style with CSS, but before we do, I'm going to give you all the code just in case maybe you missed something, or yeah, maybe you missed a step or whatever. So let me paste it here. It's saying it's too long, so let me break it up. I'm going to do, let's see, I'll do through the ingredients and paste, and then I'll do the next part because it won't let me do it all at once. Sorry about that, guys and girls. All right. So there's all your code for the HTML so far. We might have to add some more classes in just a second. All right, so now we need to style it. There's not much we need to do, thankfully. But one thing that we want to do is we want to give it this orange peachy background, okay? So in order to do that, we're gonna go over to our CSS, and we're gonna style the body of our HTML, okay? It's basically the entire thing, okay? So we wanna make sure that the background is orange. So the way we'll do that is we're going to identify a selector. Now, we don't have this in our HTML here because it's kind of built in, but our selector is going to be body, okay? So the body of our HTML is our selector, and we're going to do an opening and closing bracket, okay? That is next to your capital or next to your P on your keyboard. And let's give it some space. And since we are styling the background, we're gonna write background and color orange. Okay, color orange. And immediately you see that everything is orange. Okay, so far so good. We got to style some more, right? We got to style some more. Okay, so then we need to style some more. So remember, in our HTML, we did a div, a container that is holding the recipe card, okay? So essentially, it's everything within the purple here. We don't want that to be purple, right? We want that to be white, like we see here. We want the actual card to be white. So what we're going to do is we're going to identify this selector, recipe card. Okay, and the way you do that when you're using a class selector is you use a period, okay? And then you write what the actual class is. So you can copy it and paste it, okay? This is letting the computer know that we want to select the recipe card class, and we're gonna do something with it, okay? So how do we start doing something with it? How do we start styling it? We're going to do our opening and closing brackets again. And if we want our background to be white, then we're going to say we want our background to be white, okay? And when you are using colors, there are, you can use the terms or you can use the hex codes, which we're not going to get into today, but it's just another way of identifying these different colors. And because we're using pretty basic colors, as you can see, now the background of our recipe card is white. That works for us, okay? But it's not quite looking like what we want it to look like because it's too wide. We need to bring it in some on the screen, okay? So what we're gonna do is still inside the recipe card, we wanna style the recipe card. We want the max width to be, let's say 500 pixels. So what we're gonna do is say our max width, so it will never be any bigger than 500 pixels, okay? 500 pixels. Let's see what happens. Oh, okay. It did something, right? So our recipe card is 500 pixels, but it's off to the side and then the image ain't doing right. So we got to keep working with it. Okay, we got to keep working with it. So let's go ahead and center our recipe card. Okay, we have it the width that we want it to be, but we don't want it on the left side of the screen. We want it to be centered, but we also want it to be we don't want it touching the top and the bottom of the screen. So what we're going to do is give it a little margin. So remember when you were in grade school and you learned how to write on the notebook paper and the teacher was like, don't write in the margin. Well, that's what margin is. You're giving it a little space, okay? So when you're doing margin, let's do it this way. So margin top is basically we're identifying how much of the top do we want to be the margin. And it's going to be 50, well, we'll just say 50 pixels to start off, okay? So margin top, let's do 50. All right, so as you can see, it's no longer touching the top. We have some margin there, okay? That's good. I also want the bottom margin to have the same, okay? So let's actually look at it first. Let's see, what does it look like? Okay, there's a little, but let's do 50 pixels again. All right, so now it's looking a little better there. Now let's go ahead and center this. All right, we're gonna do that by using auto, but something that I wanna share with you really quickly is that anytime you are doing margins and your top and your bottom and your left and right are going to be similar, you can write it in a way where you don't have to do it separate. So what you can do is you can just write out margin, and then whatever your first number is, it's going to be for the top and bottom margin, and whatever your second is, it's going to be for your left and right, okay? So for our left and right, we're going to do auto. Now, I put this in, this is commented out, so it's not actually executing, but I want to show you what that would look like real quick. If we did margin left and we said auto. Okay, so it pushed it over to the right, okay? And then now we want to do margin right, auto, and it should be centered, okay? So here we did it where we listed out each one, margin top, margin bottom, they're the same, margin left, margin right, they're the same. So instead of doing that, we're going to delete this. We're gonna delete this. Not all of it, just this. All right. And we're gonna uncomment this, and you'll see that we get the same result, right? And we need to add our semicolon at the end because that's part of our syntax. And then y'all, we have only two more things to write. So let's see what it's looking like. Our image is still off the chain, like what's going on. Our image needs to be, it needs to come in some. We also need to identify what we want the width of the image to be. So we're going to select image. Okay, so it's not a class, it's just a element or a tag. Okay, so we're going to select image, open and closing, and we want the image to only be the max width of 100 of what it's contained within. Okay, we don't want it running over. We want it to be 100% of the container or the div that it is within. So here we're going to put max width and 100%. Okay, and that should fix it. Oh, snap. Y'all look, we're doing it. We're almost there. Okay. All right. The only thing now is that our margins, we need some not margins, we need some padding on our recipe card, because right now it is right up on the margin. Okay, so what we're going to do is, lastly, we're going to add some padding, but before we do, we need to add a class. Okay, so remember, we have this big div, and then we have the top div, and we have the bottom div. All right, so in our HTML, what we need to do is we need to identify this part that has the content in it. This is where we need the margin. We don't want the margin, sorry, the padding. We don't want the padding on the image. We just want it to be in the container or the div where the content is. So what we need to do is, this is our last thing, y'all. We're actually going to go to the div that has all the content in it. So here's our starting tag for the content div, and here is our closing. So we're going to go back up to our opening div, and we're going to set it as a class. And we're going to call it, what did I call it earlier? Content, but we got to make sure we have our quotes around it, okay? So this is our content div. So remember, anytime you are doing a selector in CSS and it is a class, you're going to do a period and then the name of the class, content. We need to give it padding, so it's not the outside, it's the inside that we need some space. So we're going to do padding. It's very similar to how you do margin. And what we're going to do is, let's see, the top. Let's see, we actually don't need any padding at the top. We just need it on the left, the right, and the bottom. So what we're going to do is we're going to say content padding. It's going to be 0 for the top. Okay, you're going to go top. And then we're going to do 25 pixels for the rest. Okay. And once you do that and save it, you should have, yeah, you see, you have your padding there. So now your recipe card, at least your HTML and CSS, is complete. You've done it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is copy the HTML, or actually you have the HTML, just make sure you add the class content on the div that's surrounding the content, but let me give you the CSS just in case. And then yours should look just like mine. Okay. So we're done with the first part of our project. I'm excited to jump into the JavaScript next week, and I'll share more about that next week. But if you want to put this into your portfolio, you have something. Your very first project, maybe your next project, but you have done something with HTML, CSS. Okay, but there you go. I encourage you to share it on social media, tag you know, me, tag the community, and tag other people, and have them join us next week. That would be awesome if we have more people join us for the second session for Women Who Code. So yeah, I think now we have an opportunity to take questions. Am I correct?
Yes, let's take some questions.
Awesome. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. Let me stop sharing my screen. if y'all have any questions. So I welcome any questions about choosing a career in tech. Maybe you want to hear more about maybe why I chose, or do I have any recommendations, even things about coding and programming language, or working and doing life as a woman in tech, or anything else. Like, the floor is open. Not too personal though, but what questions do you have?
Candice, I have a question about when you did the padding, what is
Mhm.
the order of the numbers? The first one is top, and then is it left, right, or?
Top, right, bottom, left.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Alex. I'm so glad that y'all enjoyed it. It can be a lot of fun. It can be a lot of fun. And if this is your first time, I would love to know, like, was this your first time coding? Second time coding? First month coding? Like, let me know. And then how did you feel about everything? I guess now I'm asking the questions. But yeah, I would love to hear from y'all. And you're welcome to ask me questions as well.
Have a few
Candice.
inputs. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Vishwa.
Yeah, I do actually code using Java, and recently I started learning Python, but have never done coding using HTML or CSS. So it was a great session. I worked along with you. I was coding it as well. So yeah, it was great.
Awesome. Congratulations for doing some new stuff today. And I'm glad that you were able to follow along. And I hope you'll join us next week.
Alex asked, do you freelance? Candice.
I do. That's my thing. I freelance. I guess, yes, I still freelance. I have a web development studio agency, and I'm actually inviting people to my team for the first time next month. And so I guess at that point, it's kind of like a step up from, just being a solopreneur, freelancer. But yeah, I find clients. And I mean, just a little bit about me. When I started my web development journey, it was actually in 2018, and I did web design with WordPress, and then I moved into learning coding on my own. And then in 2022 was when I decided that I wanted to like go for a career. Like, I want to jump into the tech field, and got on LinkedIn, did some things there, which I'm not going to get into because I get super passionate about LinkedIn. But basically, within 60 days of being on LinkedIn, I had a full-time job and a part-time job as a web developer. And so it was really cool to like do that. But then my entrepreneurial bug kicked back in, and I was like, this isn't for me. Like, I'm glad I had this experience. But then I decided to move into doing freelancing again. And then I launched my web development agency in October of this past year. So yeah. Thank you. Any other questions?
How many folks did we have follow along by a show of hands?
Yeah.
Use the Zoom to raise your hand if you followed along. All right, Vishwa.
Awesome. I mean, that is awesome, y'all, to follow along and to do, like, you actually coded a project during this time, and we did it in less than an hour. And of course, like, you can always build on it. And one thing I want to encourage you to do is between now and next week, if you want to maybe find your own recipe, your own image, see if you can like change it up a little bit, maybe make a copy of it just in case something, you're not able to fix an error, but make a copy of it. And then the copy, just play with it a little bit, change the recipe, find a new image, change the colors, do whatever you feel like you need to do to make it your own. And then, it becomes even more special to you. So, yeah.
Yeah, Candice, it looks like we had several others raise their hand in the chat saying they were able to follow along. So if you want to drop your URL for CodePen in the chat, so we can look at it, that'd be great. It'll be here for others that'll watch the recording later as well.
For sure. Yeah, I can pull it up and share my screen. Let's see.
Oh, there's Leslie's CodePen. You want to pull it up, Candice?
Yeah, I'll pull it up. Okay, let me share my screen. Let me make sure I share hers and not mine. Let me close my. I almost share mine again.
If you want me to do it, I can try.
Okay, sure. Yeah, you can do
Let
it.
me see if I can get it to pull up so we don't. Did it let me see it? Well, you might have to do this. Trying to force me to log in.
I
Okay.
found it. I found it. Okay, so I was able to pull up both. All right, so let's take a look. Just in case, let me move this out of the way. I don't know if it still does it. There was a way where you used to be able to click on it and it would take you to a separate page, but I don't see where it is here. All right, so, oh my goodness, it looks great. It looks awesome. Good job. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm trying to find the comments to see. So was that Leslie? Yeah, Leslie, thank you so much for sharing. It looks great. Congratulations.
Leslie, and is it Marissa? Marissa?
Yes, and I pulled hers up as well. Let's see.
You can call me Maria. I'm sorry. And this is
Maria.
my
All
Polish
right,
name.
Maria. Yes, looks great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, this is awesome. And if you're able to modify, like that would be so cool to see, like what is your favorite recipe and your colors and all that. So yeah, take some time to do that. And then let's look at Dominique's. Okay. Ooh, okay. A+, A+. Good job. Y'all did an amazing job. Awesome. Congratulations. Okay, everybody want to share now? Here we go. Vishwa. Okay, there you go. Great job, everyone. Thank y'all for following along, participating, and yeah, just even for the feedback. That was great.
All right. Are there any other questions? We can go ahead and stop recording now. Let's see here. Where is that button?